Regular council meeting of Monday, October 25th. I'd like to thank you all for being with us today. I do wish to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the territory of the Sauk Nation. So council, I'm turning to item 3, which is approval of tonight's agenda. So Councillor McMath is unable to join us tonight. However, Councillor Dana Lajeunesse is joining us virtually, and we can see him on the screen, and everything's a go there. So council, I'll be going to Councillor Lajeunesse first on every item for questions, and then for any comment after a motion's been moved, I'll go to Councillor Lajeunesse. It's just so that we kind of don't forget that he's there. I know we can see you, but sometimes when someone is out of the room, I just want to make sure that we're not missing you. However, if that happens, Councillor Lajeunesse, please just call out a point of order so that we can ensure that you're part of the discussion and everything tonight. And if there's any technological or technology issues, let us know as well so we can fix those. So council, with tonight's agenda, I'll be looking for us to approve the agenda with the amendment. So we have 2 additional new business items. A notice of motion from myself regarding the LGLA forum, as well as our council procedural bylaw. And I would also like that we move item 8.6, which is the ALR non-farm use placement of fill application for 7073 Grant Road West, that we move that to immediately follow item 7, the consent agenda. They are our only 2 members of the public here with us tonight, so I think we should advance that, and so we can have that discussion. And then, of course, they're always welcome to stay with us to the rest of the meeting. So, council, so for the motion then would be that the agenda for the October 25th, 2021 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended with the addition of the 2 new business items, and to move item 8.6 to immediately follow item 7. So that's a motion moved by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Councillor Lajeunesse, do you have any comment on that? No, he's moving to vote. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. So next up are council meeting minutes here for adoption. So we have our regular meeting minutes of September 20th, 2021, and that is that the following meeting minutes be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Comments or corrections on the minutes? Gold star on the minutes. Wow. So, Councillor Lajeunesse, any comments? Nope, he's good too. So all those in favor of adoption? That's unanimous, thank you. Item 5 is report of the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. McInnes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one update today. I'd like to recognize the work of our corporate officer, Carolyn Machada. Carolyn has earned the designation of Certified Municipal Clerk, which is awarded through the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. The IMC grants the CMC designation only to those municipal clerks who complete demanding educational requirements and who have a record of significant contributions to their local government, their community, and the province. The International Institute of Municipal Clerks was founded in 1947 with 14,000 members throughout the United States, Canada, and 15 other countries. And the mission of this global not-for-profit corporation is to enhance the educational opportunities and professional development of its diverse memberships. So please join me in congratulating Carolyn on this impressive milestone.
Yay.
So I'll answer any questions on that or anything else that you may have, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. McInnes, and congratulations, Ms. Machada, and our thank you to all the work that you're doing in our organization. Okay, our next item is item 6, and this is public question and comment period. So I'll just look to see if members of the public have any comment on any item on tonight's agenda. And I think we're good there, so we'll move on. For those viewing, we have 2 members of the public seated in tonight's gallery that are here for a specific item, and there's no other members of the public present. Okay, so that brings us to our consent agenda, and we have just our correspondence here. The recommendation is that item number 7.1 be adopted by general consent. Councillor Lajeunesse, do you have any questions about the consent agenda or any items you would like to pull for individual debate?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Other members of council have any? Okay, so then the motion is that the correspondence, okay, so that is that item number 7.1 be adopted by general consent, and that is that the correspondence from September 27th to October 20th, 2021 be received and filed accordingly. So that'll be moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So since we reordered the agenda, that brings us to 8.6, which is the ALR non-farm use placement of fill application for 7073 Grant Road West. So council, we do have the staff report and recommendation from our staff, but I'll turn it to staff to take us through the report, please.
Thank you. All right, so we've received an application for a non-farm use placement of fill application in order to retroactively approve the placement of fill added to the property during the development of this agricultural land reserve parcel. The purpose behind the placement of fill is to remediate most of the property, which is approximately 2 hectares, previously altered through land clearing, tree removal, and construction of a gravel driveway in order to enhance the land for farming purposes. This application is the result of the addition of fill without prior permission from the ALC in the District of Sauk. The applicant is seeking approval to retain that which was added to this property. Only in very limited circumstances, which are expressly identified by the Agricultural Land Reserve Use regulations under exempted activities, can the placement of fill or removal of soil or aggregate be undertaken without interaction with the ALC. Subject properties, as I said, just over 2.5 hectares in size. There's a small barn with an attached carport currently used for storage. The owners recently built several planting beds in an enclosed fenced area for growing berries and tomatoes. Property is currently split zoned with small scale agricultural RU3 and large lot residential R1 zoning, and is split designated agriculture and community residential in the official community plan. Surrounding land uses include small-scale agriculture, large lot residential, rural residential, and community facilities zoning. Most of the subject property's land suitable for farming was previously forested. The current landowner has reclaimed the land for farming. The owner cleared brush and removed many alder trees and prepped the site for future crop planting, imported topsoil, widened the existing irrigation pond, fenced in berry and tomato patches, and leveled an area for the construction of a greenhouse. The image on the screen depicts the 2 aerial photos taken in 2017 and 2019. On the right is the most current one, the 2019 photo, where the clearing has occurred. Following provincial regulations, Brian Wilkes and Associates identified the SPIA for the tributary of Knott Brook, calculated to be 10 meters. The applicant retained Corvidae Environmental Consulting to complete a letter of assessment, which spoke to the recommendations made by the previous QEP in the riparian area regulation report of 2016, and it confirmed that no changes to the methodology conducted under the previous regulations was required to be amended or recalculated based on the new provincial riparian areas protection regulation. There's approximately 80 square meters of fill currently located within the circular gravel driveway, which may remain as currently placed or be relocated to another area of the property if the placement of fill is approved by the ALC. In total, the owner has placed fill on approximately 2 hectares of land on the property. Gravel has also been brought onto the subject property in order to create that driveway. The request to retain the added fill and place more fill on the property aligns with Sauk's agricultural plan, as it will allow for most of the subject property as being Class 3 soils and previously altered through reclamation and development for the proposed farming uses. Most of the property was forested and unable to be used for farming, so the current property owners overseen intense reclamation of that land in the form of clearing and tree removal, as well as the gravel driveway and importing of soils. As per the Farm Practices Protection Right to Farm Act, the owners sought to reclaim the land in order to bring agriculture to this ALR parcel. Substantial amount of fill has been brought onto the property as part of the reclamation process so they can facilitate this proposal. Based on that, staff is supportive of forwarding this request to the ALC with the recommendation for approval. And I'll also note during compiling of the agenda, just in the report at the beginning of the summary, it had indicated that an exclusion had been approved, but that was in fact denied previously under file number 52302 with the ALC. So this land still remains within the ALR. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palau. I'll go to council members for questions, starting with Councillor Lajeunesse. Any questions, Councillor Lajeunesse?
Nothing from me, no.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of council? Councillor St. Pierre?
Through your worship to staff, I'm just curious about the order of things. Do we have any expectations in terms of how the ALC is going to receive this if, for example, we put forward the recommendation to approve? Do we know if they're approving these things? We've not always had success with our recommendations to the ALC, so I'm just curious.
I can't say for certain, but given the intent of the proposal put forward and the work that's been completed to date, they do appear to be in alignment with Souk's agricultural plan and the general objectives for ALR parcels. So I believe this would have a favorable chance before the ALC, but they would ultimately hold the final decision on this.
Thank you. Do we know the name of the farm?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do we know the name of the farm?
Pardon me?
The name of the farm?
It's going to be named after my family, Anderson Farm.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of council? So just following on what Councillor St. Pierre asked, in the event that the ALC does not support this, what avenue, I mean, because the intent here is to farm, but just, we had another solid, what we felt was a solid application. I think that's probably the one on Councillor St. Pierre's in mind, where we did support it and the ALC didn't approve it. So just in that case, if that happens, then what? Does the applicant have the ability to appeal? Do we have the ability to follow up and ask what went wrong, or what pieces do we have to follow through on?
So if it was not to be successful from the ALC, we would work with the provincial staff to get an understanding of what the issues were and see if there was an opportunity for the landowner to make whatever necessary amendments to their application to put forward something that could be supported, or if that wasn't the case, then in working with the province again to bring it into a state that would be acceptable with their regulations.
So they will provide a rationale if, I'm just asking just in case, like if they would provide that rationale back, rather than, no, we're just rejecting it.
Correct, and if there was any lack of understanding with the reasoning behind the decision, we as staff would follow up for clarity, just because we're local and can have a better conversation with the applicants to understand how they can move forward to bring into compliance with our bylaws as well as the provincial regulations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palau. Other questions from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, through you. So once the ALC gives the green light, then I assume then we'll move forward with this variance. That'll come to us.
Correct. Any developments that require variation through our zoning bylaw or any other bylaws, we would then follow through on that process, knowing that it's been supported at the provincial level.
Okay, seeing no other hands, so. Okay, so the recommendation is that council forward this request for non-farm use placement of fill application PLN 01600V at 7073 Grant Road West to the Agricultural Land Commission with a recommendation for approval. So it's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Discussion on the motion. Any comments? Councillor is the mover? No, Councillor Beddoes is the seconder.
Yeah, just I went down to see the property, and I actually spoke at length with Mr. Anderson in regards to what he's doing down there, and I was very, very impressed with his long-term goals, and I think in the end, he's going to have a fabulous little farm that is going to produce a lot of, probably save us one tractor trailer a year by the sound of what he can yield there, so I'm fully in support of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Lajeunesse online. I went to the mover and seconder first, but I'll go to you next.
No, I hope that you're successful in your endeavor.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, my comment would be simply that this is quite a significant day for Souk, that we're having fallow farmland brought back to productive use, and that reverses a trend, of course, that we've seen over the last number of decades. So thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. And I'm curious, I've got a lot of questions about what your plans are. I assume there'll be a farm gate and...
We have a motion on the floor.
We do, okay.
Yeah,
Then
so maybe...
I'll save that for another day. I look forward to buying some potatoes from you. Thank you.
So, Councillor Bateman, we do have the motion on the floor, but you are familiar where the address is, so maybe you could visit Mr. Anderson and have those questions answered. He may be curious, too, to know what your thoughts are. But no, I'm in full support of this. I hope that it moves smoothly from the ALC, because this is the type of thing that we're trying to do here. So I'm just hoping it moves smoothly so that the applicant can carry on and realize the vision here. We do need small-scale farming, and to actually have someone come forward and do this is really exciting for us, as others have said. So giving our full support to this as well. Okay, so I'll look to call the question then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, and good luck, Mr. Anderson, and we hope to have a good outcome here. Keep us apprised. But don't leave yet. We'd like to... No, I'm just kidding. Just excited to have people in the audience here. Okay, Council, thank you for that reorder. So we'll bring it back to reports, and our first one up is 8.1, the Public Complaint Resolution Policy C0-014. So we have our staff report, but I'll turn it over to our staff to take us through it.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you can see before you, the Office of the Ombudsperson has recently offered training to local government, amongst other organizations, on the creation of a complaint resolution policy, as they're responsible in part for processing complaints against local government. So through that training, we took the opportunity to utilize some of their templates and their guidelines and their advice to create the policy that's in front of you today. Ultimately, the policy will help the district improve customer service through the provision of clear, easy-to-use complaint procedure, timely and reasonable responses to complaints, as well as using the complaints as opportunities to improve service and program delivery issues. We actually received a complaint at the CAO's level a few weeks ago, and we took the opportunity to process it through this complaint, and it was responded to within, I believe, 2 or 3 business days of receiving the complaint, and actually received really great feedback from the complainant on the thoroughness of the response and the information that they received through that. And I think finally, we also did take advantage of the offer from the Office of the Ombudsperson to review our policy in its draft form, and got really great feedback from them, and they had no major concerns. It was got a few little tweaks, and that's the policy that's in front of you today.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to questions. Councillor Lajeunesse, any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Other members of council? Maybe I'll just ask while others are thinking a bit, is it's fairly straightforward. It seems that it was the case of staff following through with efforts made by the Office of the Ombudsperson, pardon me. So I just wanted to confirm it's not because we have had a problem that we're trying to fix with a policy, it's just adopting some best practices from the office specifically?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Other questions, Councillor St. Pierre?
I was quite impressed with what I saw here. I'm curious about something that may be actually in the second part coming up, but I'm going to ask anyway right now. How is this information going to be shared amongst the various types of bylaw enforcement officers and amongst staff, just to make sure that everybody's up to speed?
This particular policy is not applicable to the bylaw enforcement officers. As you mentioned, item 8.2 is specifically to address bylaw enforcement complaints. This is once they reach the higher level, but it also, the principles, and there is an accompanying operating procedure that I've just put out for internal review on conducting investigations, and that was also used as part of the process for the test complaint. And again, it seemed to work really well. It contains a section on rules and policies of procedural fairness that will be applicable to the bylaw enforcement officers, and then the remainder of that document is more for the management level that will resolve complaints, hopefully at the point of service, rather than when they escalate to the CAO.
So if I understand correctly, when you say management, you'd be referring to our directors, and I guess the directors and our CAO and mayor will be getting together to make sure that they're all familiar with the new policy and good to go.
Yeah, it would include exempt staff. So managers, for instance, the deputy corporate officer manages the bylaw enforcement officers, so she would be the first line that would address any complaints about how they have handled a complaint, or Parks would go to our manager of Parks before it escalated to our director of operations, and then ultimately our CAO.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, through you, so there will be a complainant registry.
There
That's
already
correct.
is one. I created it today.
Okay, that's why you're certified. And I'm just curious, being a curious person, I'm wondering whether council ever gets a chance to look at those documents. Are they reported into us, even in camera?
I think that's something that we can do. One nice piece about that is, as is noted in the policy, is that we use the complaints as a learning opportunity. So one of the items that came out of our past complaint was that the individual hadn't received a response to her submission. So that's actually been all drafted up today, and we're getting ready to close that loop, and that complaint will be 100% complete.
The ombudsperson. Buds person, there's an S in there. They get about 7,500 complaints a year. Can you give us a sense of how many we get here in Souk at our level?
I believe there was only one last year in their last report that did not even make its way to the organization. It was handled at their level. I think, yeah, okay, 0 the year before.
And those reports do come to us. They report out, I think quarterly, we get something, and then it flows through the correspondence. I mean, it's very high level. It's just complaint closed, and, it doesn't give any information at all, as it shouldn't, but you can sort of see that, yeah. Maybe semi-annually. Mr. McInnes?
Just one other thing, Your Worship, to your question. In the 2020 culture assessment that was done for our staff and council, we had the 5 values that sort of came to the top as values that we want to live by. The one under customer service, this was a big piece of it, responding to the public in a more meaningful way. So very timely for this policy to be in front of council today.
Okay, that's great, and just, okay, go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre. Okay, I'll come to you in a second, I just have a question. And just on this, I think, where Councillor Bateman asked if council had an ability to view the registry, I wonder if, if we're seeing that, if there's some way then, there's clearly we need more resources in a particular department. So I guess it would be curious to see what that looks like. Sometimes I get, not complaints, but more like either a resident would like quicker action on something or more resources put into something, is just how would that be the, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, if there was a way over time to see, okay, we need to look at it, adding more resources to this particular department. Maybe it's about, you know, a quicker response or more resources in a certain area. Will it provide that information? Or, I mean, staff kind of do that at the service planning level anyway, but I'm just wondering there.
Yeah, I don't think that those would be escalated this high. We
Okay.
will certainly track the items that are handled also at the departmental level, at the managerial level, and use those as learning opportunities as well. That, our hope is that is where most complaints will be addressed, and they never escalate that high. But of course, the need for additional resources is something that our leadership team would take forward to our CAO to bring back to council and look at service level reviews and things like that annually.
Okay, very good. Okay, so the recommendation is that council adopt C0-014, Public Complaint Resolution Policy, moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Anything to motivate on, Councillor St. Pierre?
Yes, I'm really happy to see this particular piece of policy work. I think it really follows in with the strategic plan and the goal of actually providing a transparent, excellent organization. I think that one of the things that I've noted in our emails is just, we've gotten so much better, and this is just going to standardize and make sure that we have a good response all the time, and that we can actually have it accountable, and I'm very pleased to see this.
Thank you. Councillor Beddoes, any comment?
Yeah, just good on staff, that's something that makes our whole area look good, that we respond to complaints in a timely manner, and that's what we asked for 3 and a bit years ago. So that's great. I'm very happy with this.
Good. There's a pandemic in there, lots to complain about. Councillor Lajeunesse? Any comments?
No, I'll just echo the comments of the other two.
Thank you very much. Councillor Logans?
I really love that we have this policy coming forward. I appreciate that. It's a positive culture shift, and it turns the negativity of receiving a complaint into something that is a positive learning experience. So I really think that will help our organization a lot more than we might think. Thank you.
Okay, good. Call a question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So next up is item 8.2, the Bylaw Enforcement Policy C0-016.
Thank you, Your Worship. So when we looked at the complaint policy, our previous policy was the complaint and bylaw enforcement policy. It didn't really separate the two. And as we just saw, the complaint policy is much more in-depth and I think much more meaningful the way that it's been written. So it was an opportune time to look at our bylaw enforcement our bylaw enforcement policy. As well, the Office of the Ombudsperson has provided some training and some templates and advice on the creation of that. So we used our previous policy as the base and built on it from there. I think it's just more fairly addressing the complaints and again using those rules and out of the procedural fairness that have been incorporated into the policy. But again, we also were able to use this on a test project, and I think that it went very successfully. So we're confident in the policy that we're putting in front of you today. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, going to questions. Councillor Lajeunesse, any questions?
No, it all looks good.
Thank you. Questions in the room. Councillor St. Pierre?
A couple of questions. The first one is with regards to the other agencies that are involved. So we're not actively in charge of our animal control. We're not actively, in charge of the RCMP. So I'm curious, again, how does this particular policy shift affect them? How does that information get out to them? How do they buy in on this?
It's still, RCMP, they will do some investigation for us, and the staff sergeant at RCMP has endorsed this policy. as part of the leadership team. So he's happy with the way it's been written. We will certainly share it with them once it's been adopted by council. As the CRD is a contractor, that would be something that our manager of bylaws would address with them. We'll certainly share it with them, but I think that would probably end up coming back to us at a higher level complaint if they are not successful in dealing with it at the CRD level. Sorry, and I didn't answer your question the last time on that. We will be doing an education component with our staff to let them know. And of course, the bylaw enforcement's already aware of this. They've reviewed the policy before it came forward to council, but with the complaint policy, we'll be doing an educational component with all staff on that.
Thank you very much for that. And my second question has to do with something I was actually surprised to see, and that's the District of Sauk has no duty to take enforcement action against every contravention of a bylaw that may occur within its jurisdiction. I was under the impression, and I'm just looking for clarification, that if we had 2 complaints with regards to a bylaw, we were obligated to follow through. Is that not the case? I'm just trying to get clarification.
No, there is no legal requirement for the municipality to enforce any of its bylaws, and I don't think that happens very often, but it just means, if we're not successful at the lowest levels, we're not obligated to take it to court, let's say. Like if we don't get compliance, but it's going to cost $100,000 to get enforcement against that property, the municipality is not obligated to follow through at that high a level. You're welcome.
Other questions for staff? Councillor Beddoes?
Bit of a comment. I noticed under 3.7, and I'm saying this just for the public's benefit, is council is not involved in any way with the sanctioning of an investigation or deciding what alleged contraventions will be investigated. And I think that's important because I know I get some calls every once in a while, and I say, call Bylaw. They're the ones that work on it. So I'm glad that's in there. It's just something to refer to. Thanks.
Thank you, and that's where that ties into our delegated authority bylaw, and we've delegated that authority to certain positions in our organization to see that, and that's where we don't want to be muddling into that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there's professional expertise there to handle that. Okay, so the recommendation then is that council adopt C0-016 bylaw enforcement policy, and that council rescind complaint in bylaw enforcement 2009. Can these be together? Okay. So that's moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Discussion, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I looked at the 2009 policy, and this is a dramatic update. I don't know if it's dramatic. I should rescind dramatic. It does elaborate much more fully, and thank you, Ms. Mushada, and our bylaw department. I noticed this is CO policy number 016, so that these 16 policies have been updated in these last 2.5 years or so. So thank you very much, and I hope the stack is not too daunting, still ahead of you.
Councillor St. Pierre?
Just a quick comment. I was wondering if the Office of the Ombudsperson was going to get any recognition or thank you for their work, because it looks like they were a good team player on this one.
We've certainly thanked them. We've had online meetings with their staff, but I think it's part of what they do.
Excellent. Okay. Councillor Lajeunesse, any comments on the motion?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing from anyone else, I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next up is the Letters of Support Policy C0-017.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as Council is probably aware, we typically receive letters of support from various community organizations. And this policy is just to kind of put some, regulations in place that will allow the mayor and the CAO to respond to those without them having to come to council for approval, as usually they are in support of a grant application or other such small item that typically would not require council's endorsement, but also I believe that any of them can be referred to council for a decision. Yeah, under Section 7, so happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? Councillor Lajeunesse.
No.
You really had to think about that.
I'm finding the mute button.
Okay, all good. Members of council in the room, any questions? Okay. There is one just that I had is just the timing sometimes can be a bit tricky, and I don't even know if this policy would address that, because sometimes it's our meeting schedule. You know, we don't meet, so then that's the problem, and doesn't quite constitute a special meeting because, you know, the summertime, people are on vacation, so even if you wanted to call a meeting for an item, the quorum can't be achieved. So I just think is there some way of just, there's several organizations that routinely approach us for the letters of support, which I'm happy to provide, and I'm sure we all are, just to communicating out that this policy is in effect so that they're aware of it as they plan ahead. Because it isn't a case where you can reach out to me, and it's the case sometimes I get an email on the Monday, the turnaround is Tuesday at midnight, and then we're scrambling to put something together. And so just having a bit more lead time would be a benefit. And sometimes it's the same letter year after year, which is all fine, it's easy to draft up. But if we're checking into other things, we need more time. So is there some way of just reaching out to some of our organizations that we supply them to and just educating a bit that this is coming into effect, note it in your calendars, anything like that?
Yeah, the policy does require a minimum of 3 weeks prior to the date the letter is required for submission. We can see how many we can find that we're receiving on a regular basis and reach out to them and let them know that that deadline has occurred. But this does resolve the issue around council meetings, as there's no further requirement to bring them back unless they are more complex and the CAO feels that they need to come in front of council.
Okay, and then the other one, and just in item 6.5, where it says the district is not applying in competition for the same grant stream. This is where I wonder, it gets a bit tricky, because some of the grants will say that you can have both the community organization and the local government apply, and then either the funder is sort of encouraging that. But here in our policy, it's saying no. So then what? Because that's where it's a bit challenging, because some of the grants are oversubscribed and some are undersubscribed, and if they're and we don't know that until we find out what the success is. So I just worry a bit that we say that, but then there's still capacity in the grant stream. We're successful, the entity could have been successful also. So by putting that in there, it kind of...
I have a response.
Can I hear from Mr. McInnes first?
It's a very good question, and we did debate this internally as well. Sometimes we may leave money on the table if we restrict grant applications. Conversely, though, if we have one coming from a community for an oversubscribed grant, having just the one for consideration sometimes is to our benefit. So we've certainly had the same discussion. We won't be putting in grant applications unless we're ready for those grant applications. And they're going to be for the bigger ICIP and those types of grants. But if council wishes that one to be changed, it's your time to have that discussion this evening.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre?
I was thinking that the actual language is the district is not applying in competition. So, for example, in the case where the funding organization was encouraging community organizations and local government to apply, we wouldn't actually be in competition, because the nature of the grant would be we weren't competing at that point in time. I would imagine because of synergies or some such thing. So I don't know if that would address every case, but at least in the case where the funding agency is encouraging NGOs and local government to apply, I think that we're not applying in competition. So The case that our CEO, Mr. McInnes, was describing was really an oversubscribed fund where there is competition. And I think in that particular case, this probably makes sense. But that's
where it's hard to know, right? It's hard to know what'll be, sometimes what you think will be oversubscribed isn't, and what you think will be under is overwhelmed, and so it's hard to know that. But there's a sentiment from some in the community that, you know, when the community association, for example, applied for the fund for the turf field, we had also applied for the a lighted pedestrian multipurpose trail to go from for the Throop corridor, and the district was successful, but the turf field wasn't, and then we weren't ready to do that work, so the funds got allocated to do Wadham's Way instead. So that just sort of leaves a sentiment like you applied, but then in this case, everything shifted. We're not applying until these are projects that are in our 5-year financial plan, staff are gearing up for it, so we know, you know, and then sometimes with ISIP, I mean, we're competing against Sea Park, right, for recreation, and that falls under the CRD. There's some representation here and there, but it's hard to know, right?
question.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to whether or not having the policy in place would obligate us to provide a letter of support. For example, just as an example, the CRD through Sea Park is applying for recreation funding. We want to apply for recreation funding too. Are we obligated by a policy to provide them with a letter of support? Or do we still have the discretion to say it's not in our best interest to actually support theirs because we're really trying to push ours? So I didn't see any language around discretion in here necessarily. That basically, maybe I just missed it, but I didn't see anything that said that yourself or Mr. McInnes could simply decide this doesn't fit our OCP, this doesn't fit what we need. We're not going to go with that for whatever reason, or I just don't have a good feeling. I don't know. I'm just wondering, is there any sort of discretion?
But I think that's where we don't know that, right? And it's just with a community like ours that needs amenities and infrastructures and every single thing, it's the case of you want to encourage to get as much success, whether we're doing the project or a community stakeholder or organization is.
No, absolutely. I'm just curious whether or not you have the option of not putting the support.
I don't want to be put in that position to make that call when they're necessary. When you hear people advocating, that would be like, no, you know, that would be a tough call. I would be me personally would say, no, submit it. You need to apply. I'll advocate for this. So that where I would contradict that. That would be my problem. Councillor Beddoes?
But you still have the option, if there's anything controversial on the table, most of the run-of-the-mill stuff is pretty straightforward. If there's something controversial, you have every right to bring it to council and get the broader, and so we're the check and balance of that in the end. I would trust staff that if there was something like that, and yourself, that it would come before council, so I don't have a problem with the way it's written.
Okay, my only challenge is that, and again, it's not that that's all about me, but there's as so many grant streams open up, it's hard to keep them all straight as to what's what, and then some of them take so long to give approval for, you think it's like a new grant, and then it's like, wow, this is like 2.5 years old, and they're just dribbling out little bits and pieces. Like, it's hard to follow sometimes. And then the language has changed, gas tax is no longer gas tax. Like, it's hard to just keep it all straight. So I was just, any suggestions from staff on how we can maybe adjust this a bit? Because I see that as being a bit of a challenge. But at the same time, I don't want to, now we all, I mean, if they're encouraging other groups to apply for the same fund, that's how the funders is designing the program. So I don't want us to be the call, well, no, you can't apply. When the funder has said, no, we can encourage, you can have one from the municipality, one from another community organization, when they've set it up that way.
So we've got some, Your Worship, some proposed language, but you're exactly right. Some grant programs, it's a requirement to have a letter from your local government. Some are not. So it's those ones where, and it'll be the bigger grants where a community organization and the district would be applying for the same grant, where we would bring those to council as Councillor Beddoes suggested, and council can decide.
Okay, that's good. I like that. Okay, I just can't see it because Dana's in the way. Sorry, Dana.
Sorry, I can't change the size of my head.
No, it's all fine. He's left. Okay. Any other questions from members of council? Okay, so I'll go to the recommendation here then, and thank you, staff, for that. That council adopts CO-017 Letters of Support Policy with the following amendment. By deleting item 6.5 and insert a new number 7 as follows, where the district is in competition for the same grant stream, the request will be forwarded to council for a decision. And then we can get all the information.
Yes, that's good.
Fantastic. Okay, do we have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments, Councillor Beddoes? Councillor St. Pierre? No. Councillor Lajeunesse? Still good? Nope. Anyone in the room? Nope. Okay, call the question. All in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you.
So I just do want to comment, Your Worship, but on those ones, we're going to have to be pretty hard and fast on the 3-week notification, because
So we have to be,
hard and fast on the 3 weeks' notice in order to get it onto a council agenda. So typically, that's a struggle for some groups. So we'll have to make sure that they know that, and they give us time to get it onto a council agenda.
yeah, and these, I think you're right, they are the larger projects. So we usually begin to start, and then usually it's mainly been Sea Park, I think, for the most part, would be the main entity, and then some community groups who we're already working with, like Searchin, for example, on their project.
The
So I think
issue
that's
is there's such a narrow window on these things nowadays. They're announced, and, you have 4 or 5 weeks to apply.
Okay, no, that's good. Okay, so moving along, item 8.4 is the council committee term expirations.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sure you're getting sick of hearing my voice tonight. So it's just that time of year again when the committee vacancies will be completed either December 1st or December 31st in accordance with their terms of reference or the committee structure policy. So currently we have the Community Economic Development Committee, the Land Use and Development Committee, the SUC Program of the Arts Committee, and the Climate Action Committee, which is currently scheduled to cease as of December 31st in accordance with a previous council resolution. So we're just here to ask which committees council would like to continue in 2022, and in accordance with the policy, council directs us to advertise for those vacancies. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so council, I'm interested in hearing a bit, rather than talking about advertising for new positions yet, is more, let's discuss the term of the committees, because if some of them are winding up, there's no point in seeking people to advertise if it's just one meeting and the work is wrapped up. And then it's just looking, because you all chair or are liaison to various committees, and there's various work plans that are underway or in the works or completed in various stages of the committee. So it would just be helpful to have a sense of your thoughts on this. So Councillor Lajeunesse, you're up first, being the liaison to the SPA committee.
Yeah.
And Community Economic Development.
Yeah, I think that based on our workshop that we had with Gord McIntosh last spring, 2020, when he was asked how we should handle our committees, his recommendation was that there's only a need for 2 committees, and that is land use and development and economic development. And soon thereafter, we formed 3 additional committees: the SPA committee, climate action and the OCP committee. Now, OCP is kind of a standalone committee, and it's I feel that that one's necessary. However, the other two I question a little bit. For example, I think the SPA committee, I think if we were to take one member from that committee and put them into Community Act Dev, I think that would be a good fit. And climate action, if we were to take one member from there and include them in land use and development, I think that there's some efficiencies that could be achieved by doing so. And I would just like to get the thoughts from staff and also from other members of council on that.
Okay, that helps, thank you. Other members of council? Councillor St. Pierre?
I agree that we need to keep our committees lean. I entirely agree that the SPA's function could probably be assumed by the Community Economic Development Committee. The Climate Action Committee has been doing a great deal of work specifically in education and public engagement, and my understanding of the terms of reference of land use, and I am familiar with that one, and I would assume community economic development, is that there's no actual public engagement and education component in their terms of reference, so those would have to be significantly amended. I'm also a little bit loath to take the air of the tires out of the Climate Action Committee, which has been doing fantastic work. I'm not sure that we necessarily are best served by rolling up that committee before the work they're doing is more or less complete, and I think I would love to know from the committee members when they would expect that work to be complete, rather than enforcing a shutdown on people that have volunteered a huge amount of amazing experience and done some incredible work for us. I just have significant concerns over that. But I'll pass it on to hear what other people have to say.
Okay, Councillor Bateman?
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Yes, Councillor Lajeunesse is right. Gord McIntosh did recommend those two committees, and land use and community economic development. And yet and the SPA committee, well, I don't have a view one way or the other. I know there's some great people on that committee, and they brought forward some good work, though it is logically doable under the Community Economic Development banner. Naturally, the Climate Action Committee, I believe, has done remarkable work this last year and in the previous 2 years under Councillor St. Pierre's direction. And we have a lot more work to do. So tomorrow night, in fact, I was planning to bring forward a motion at the committee's recommendation that the term of the committee be renewed and extended to November 1st, 2022. We do have on the Land Use and Development Committee already, there is an environmental position on that committee. And on the Community Economic Development Committee, of course, Beth Lang has joined that committee as a Climate Action Committee representative. So I think given the scale and scope of these challenges, developing a community economic development strategy in and of itself is a huge task. And I think Climate Action Committee does definitely need to be extended into next year. I'd also mention a potential OCP implementation and monitoring committee that perhaps needs to be formed upon adoption of the OCP. Yeah. In fact, it would be great to move tonight that the term of the committee, the Climate Action Committee, be renewed and extended to November 1st, 2022. But I'm not sure if now is the time to do that.
Well, I'm trying to get some information from
okay.
from councillors, so I don't want to entertain any motion just yet as we're kind of info sharing here. Councillor Logan, Beddoes?
Yeah, I would concur with Councillor Bateman. I think the Climate Action Committee I'm not quite as enthusiastic with some of the findings as Councillor Bateman is, but I think that there's a lot of work to be done in this next year. It is front and center. I would, just caution that the province is heavily involved in action now. The feds are heavily involved in action, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But I think the Climate Action Committee has a bit more life in it yet, so I would not have a problem with seeing it extended. The OCP, it did come up in our OCP committee that they would like some sort of role after, and as Councillor Bateman alluded to it, the OCP Monitoring Committee, where they would like to be there, sort of as it rolls out the first year. But that needs to be debated at length. I want to debate it a little bit further in the group itself. But they've certainly put their heart and soul into this OCP, and they would like to have some sort of involvement in the first year of its implementation. So, yeah, I really don't see a problem with, I know we want to try and keep it sort of committee light, but I think in the times we're in, other than the SPA committee, which can be rolled in, I'd like to keep the other ones.
Okay, Councillor Logans, any comments? So I'm looking at this a bit differently myself, and I'm looking at the terms of reference. So I think that for community economic development, they're getting underway. They didn't have quorum, as I understand, at the last meeting. So it's about that ECDEV strategy, which I think is very important. So we're just sort of getting going with the membership with South Island Prosperity Project. The MRDT was paused. A lot of the items were just, some of these items have been paused because of COVID naturally. I don't see SPA fitting into this at all. I just think the work is completely different. So one of them is we're looking for their feedback on the memorial wall. I need an artist, from the artist's impression of that, not so much a community ECDEV perspective in a sense. And also, we're running, as you all know, we're running out of space in this building, and we've been talking in the past about, an annex for staff or a vault for safekeeping, and I queried a bit about, what's all in there? And we have a lot of art, stored, and we've circulated things out of here, and things have moved around or been taken. We're storing all of this. And so would members of the Land Use or ECDEV Committee want to sit and look at district artwork? And probably not. We need an artistic, again, someone from the world of arts to look at that. Also, as things open, we're hoping for more art and cultural events. We have that CRD service that we've entered into temporarily to monitor. So who's going to give us some feedback on what's working and share all that word? I just see it as something a bit different. Right now with the OCP, and I'll share this, I'm struggling with it. I'm struggling with the draft. And this is our overarching document. So until this is adopted, it has to remain a priority of ours. And for all the work that comes into it to get adoption and that done, I think that's a priority. So would it not make sense to concentrate on the OCP and have the Climate Action Committee and Land Use Committee give some feedback into that? Because there's differing views here, and if this is not adopted, then what? Then we have all these unfinished plans all over the place, and different groups coming at us with this or that or this or that. I believe they're all doing excellent work, but there's a lot of it. And what is our capacity to deliver, realistically? We're going to get some insight into that next week when we get into budget conversations. We already know that climate action is a 3% tax increase. We know that there's a significant RCMP bill coming our way for not only e-com, but for unionization and for other things. Unknown number, significant tax increase coming our way. We know that we have infrastructure that we need to get on with. And then following, let's say the OCP is adopted, there's a lot of work to come with that zoning bylaw. And so that's where those two groups are important. So right now I'm at a point where there's so much firing off here, and by no stretch of genius, but I'm struggling to keep up with it all, with all the various initiatives. They're all very important, but when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And then what? Then we have unfinished plans, or this is a draft, that's a draft, that's a draft, that's a draft, that's, you know. So in some ways, well, I respect all the work that's being done, is what is our capacity to deliver? Like, and I think we might need some more time on this. We might need to understand where the budget's going to fit first. We agreed at the last meeting, like, we're going to put it all in and see what happens. So that's fine. We agreed that, and that's fine, because everyone is getting excellent input into that. But then where we see that, and we know it's going to be in the double digits, I don't think that's affordable, and I don't think we can move in that direction. So then, what are we going to take out? And when we get there, we'll have a sense of then what committees make sense, I think. I think it's just a bit early. I mean, unfortunately, we lost our community active officer. That was just at a point of crystallizing a lot of essential work. What if the budget has us not replacing that person? Then what? Is it needed to have a CED committee? And then how do we resource it? We need to know that. Again, I say I'm struggling with the OCP. I have a lot of questions and I need to have answered there and to get through that, and I'll get there. But if I do, I'm a good barometer. Other people in the community do as well, and I'm getting a lot of concerns and queries about it raised to me. It should go to the OCP committee, but they're reaching out to me now, and what is the capacity? I don't have the answers, which is why I'm reading it, and having a bit of struggle too. So then, just right now, to say, okay, we're going to renew all of these. We don't know what our budget is. What is the capacity? What is our ability to deliver? The only one right now I can say that should continue is the SPA committee, because they have some tasks to finish. The memorial piece is a big one for us. It has been for many councils nearing almost, I don't know how many years, almost 10 years. The artwork needs to be dealt with in a respectful fashion. So who's going to do that? Our staff don't have capacity. I mean, those were the parts in the that we put in the terms of reference that we're looking. So I don't want to, it's just like, okay, can we just stop for a second and see where we're at now? And then decide what we need to move forward on. Because I worry that we're going to end up with a lot of unfinished stuff and expensive taxes, a lot of unfinished work, and a lot of upset committee members because we failed to deliver on all these things. Councillor Beddoes?
I just want a point of clarity here. I mean, you've been articulating quite well, but I just want to get a sense. So either we postpone even making a decision, which is not possible because these terms run out, or we extend everybody for 6 months.
Well, I think that's too long. I think we have to, the terms, I mean, in the OCP committee, I think, has to remain in place till the OCP is adopted.
Yeah,
So
I'll comment on that too after, but I just think, I just want to get it clear as to exactly what you're asking for. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're asking that a lot of this work needs to be completed, and we don't know about it's completed until we do the budget. And so what are you specifically asking, that we carry these groups on for another 3 months?
I think now that we hold off on advertising until we know the strength, how long these are going to stay in place for, and that they do have some different expiration times, don't they, or are they all the same?
Well, it says December 1st, so that's what I'm going on. So if we're coming up to December 1st pretty quick. So, I mean, to me, the logical thing to do would be extend them for 3 months or whatever is reasonable from council. And that would give us the time to deal with budgets, that gives us time to deal with everything else and allow them to carry on and then re-examine it in 3 months and see where we're at. by that time, we will probably have a better idea. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just drawing on your concerns and trying to find a way forward, because these things, according to the rules now, expire December 1st unless we make a decision right now to extend them. And I felt strongly that the climate action, all of them are worthwhile for, certainly on the short term, and the OCP will look after itself when that comes forward. So I'm just trying to get it clear as to, I hear your concerns, but what is your suggested remedy? Is it a 3-month extension?
I would have only suggested a month, or until, I think it's when it depends on what comes sooner. Will we get through all of our budget deliberations next week? I don't know.
Doubt it.
I think we have to wait until we at least come to a place where we can put that bylaw forward for first reading. And then we'll have a better sense of what we're willing to fund. And then it'll make sense to determine what capacity is in there to fund certain committees.
Unless you put something in the motion that until the budget is finalized?
Or the end of this budget year, because these all have funding. They're sort of supported until the end of this budget year. The budget doesn't roll in, it doesn't roll over.
So the
I
end of the
see
year.
Yeah, the end of this year for now.
Okay, well, that's an extension of a month. I'm okay with it,
Yeah.
I just want a bit of clarification. And then we'll deal with them at that point in time. Like I wouldn't have a problem with climate action going on for another year. But that would give us a bit more time and a little bit clarity as to have a little bit more ammunition to make the proper decision, I guess is what I'm striving for. But I just needed it clear exactly what you were asking.
I hope that's somewhat clearer now.
Well, no, it is.
Yeah, okay, good.
I want a date and a time, and if they expire December 1st, so if we make it December 30th or whatever it is, that's fine by me. It's just that I need that clarified.
No, thank you for that. Ms. Machado?
Sorry, I'd just like to mention that should council entertain an extension of the committee, we have not surveyed any of the members as to whether they would be willing to continue to serve. So it's just something to consider. We may offer them an extension and end up not having a quorum to hold meetings.
Well, then the decision will be made for us. And then, right, I mean, if they're not having quorum, then I think we need to reevaluate and then at least find out, okay, why is it that no sitting members returned, to have a sense of what that is. And then if council does feel, okay, we need this committee to continue on, then I think we'd have to look at the terms of reference, restructure them, and then put a call out for volunteers, potentially. I don't know, because that would be interesting. Other thoughts from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, speaking for the second time, I'm really proud of these committees. I think we've assembled some really solid groups of citizens, and I do remember back in 2015, the end of 2015, 3 committees were just cut, just like that. And I was chairing one of them, and it was frankly rude. B, there was a lot of work being done. C, these groups are realistic, and they know that they're relatively realistic. They they know what's reasonable given staff time and budgets. And with the OCP continuing onwards, these groups remain really good sounding boards for ongoing input as we develop the OCP. So Councillor Beto's suggestion, I know the Climate Action Committee will be reporting in December some of the Climate Action Plan framework, but that's going to be kind of, it could easily be elaborated, and we have people here who would like to continue elaborating it through at least the spring. So the thought of an extension of 3 to 6 months makes sense to me.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that there's 2 things that appeal to me. One is something along the lines of what Councillor Bateman has suggested, which is I would go longer than 3 months. I would go 6 months so that we can actually get some solid traction on the OCP, so that some of the items like the memorial wall and so on and so forth could be dealt with, so that the storytelling communication strategy of the Climate Action Committee can be put into place. I don't think 3 months is going to cut it because we're looking at basically December, we hit the Christmas holidays, we're into January, we're just getting started up again. I think it just wastes our time to have to come back at that point and provide a second extension. So I'd prefer to have a longer extension because, as I think seems to be coming forward, I think all of these committees have excellent people and are doing excellent work that we need. So I don't see any reason to pull the plug. So that would be a status quo option. The other option, as far as I'm concerned, might be to just bring this to a committee of the whole if we have one soon enough and actually have a larger, more robust discussion specifically on this subject and really look at our committee structure and what we might want to do. That might include things like amending terms of reference substantially for the Community Economic Development Committee, and maybe then looking at seeing whether or not the SPA committee would like to, join hands. But I think we have to have more time and a discussion specifically about this. And I would suggest a committee of the whole for this. But those are my two thoughts, status quo or send it to committee of the whole.
And I don't disagree with you, it's just our budget. And what are we able to afford as a municipality? And then what?
And I just to follow up on that one, because I meant to talk about the budget, I would really rather not make decisions as to whether or not to keep committees while doing budgeting and looking at a double digit and scrambling for every means, because I think that would do a disservice to the work of the committees and to the members of the committees. It's not a good headspace, I think, for making that kind of call. And if we end up making a call on whether or not to continue committees based on our budget deliberations, I don't think we're doing anyone a service. That would be my thought.
Okay. Councillor Logans.
Great discussion. I've just kind of been taking it all in. My question through you to staff would be if we did decide to extend it just to December 31st, when would this decision be brought back to council? Because I feel like that's too short. Yeah. While it's appealing, it would just come back to us in a couple of weeks, perhaps. I understand the hesitancy to extend any terms beyond, well, actually I don't. I understand the hesitancy to extend the Climate Action Committee beyond the budget because there's a lot going on there. I feel like the SPA committee could probably accomplish a lot in the community with no budget and with the budget that's already allocated through our bylaw. So I'm comfortable moving ahead with them. And obviously the OCP committee as well. So really, to me, it's just a decision to move ahead with the Climate Action Committee on which, like, how far we might extend that through the budget process. The other two I feel are extremely necessary, obviously, and would move ahead with those as well. So
OCP and the CEDC.
and land
Use, yeah.
So really, if we can find in my mind, if we can find a balance for the Climate Action Committee, or perhaps bring that specific line back at a upcoming meeting, that could be valuable, because I definitely understand where you're coming from, Mayor Tate, in regards to looking at that budget and seeing where things fit in.
Let me just ask staff then, and just we've all given some comments now, just on your thoughts.
Lots of thoughts, Your Worship, but part of the, and I totally agree, that the quality and quantity of work being done by committees is really special right now. But that resource piece is important. So the prime utility of the committees is to make recommendations to council. Some of our committees are moving outside of that. But when recommendations come to council, I request that we be given some time to give council a good idea of what the capacity impacts of those are. So I would really request that, let's not make decisions on recommendations at the same meeting. Let's give staff time to come back and talk about impacts of those decisions. That piece is missing a little bit right now. I do see a bunch of overlap, though. For example, I don't see the SPA committee being really focused on art right now. It's more focused on culture, and they really, really want to redo the culture plan. That's an overlap with community economic development and the work that's going on there. Of course, overlap between Community Act Dev and climate action. So if the budget that's been requested by climate action comes in, and we do have a full-time staff person committed to climate, it does have an impact on the skill set that we'll be looking for Community Act Dev and the work that we will be doing in Community Act Dev. And in some ways, I think maybe take us away from the whole low-carbon resilience model that we've been building on. So there are overlaps. I think that from a resource perspective, we have to be cognizant of those overlaps and be as effective and efficient as we can with our community work. And so the bottom line to me is, yes, the resource piece is extremely important. We've brought forward what we had costed out in the 7% solution. The climate action now is really looking at getting into measuring and reporting. If we get into measuring and reporting beyond the 244 houses that we have to retrofit for energy efficiency and the modal exchange for transportation, it's a different ballgame. So we were just looking at that as those are the measurements. How well are we going to do in those two areas? But if we want to start measuring our emissions above and beyond what CRD does periodically, it's going to take significant new resources. So yeah, the resource side of it is really important, and it's going to stack up against some other priorities that you're going to see in budget.
Okay, thank you. So before I started talking, staff did put a recommendation forward, and that was just to advertise to fill the vacant positions on these committees. Is my resource concern and budget approval a factor then at all, or?
I've got a comment on that.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, it's interesting. So if use the Climate Action Committee as an example here. So we're seeking $244,000, 3%. So your logic is that if indeed the Climate Action Committee does not receive what it's requested, we'll take our ball and go home. You've got a collection of experts on this committee who have been providing unpaid expertise to the district. They're grown-ups, they're adults. They will continue to provide.
Just point of order, Councillor Bateman. I'm not suggesting the Climate Action Committee would react that way. My concern when I raise that is it's discouraging. I've been on a committee where you give recommendations only to have them rejected each and every single time. And so there's some things that we might not be able to deliver on.
Yeah.
So then we need to look at the terms of reference to say then, okay, are these fitting? And maybe we should reevaluate so that we're all on the same page. Similarly, there is some things, we form SPA specifically to do these things. And if the committee members are not interested or want to or whatever, then we need to look at that again, because that was our direction to the committee, is that this committee does these things, and if the A, B, and C, if they come back with WXY, we're disconnected. So we need to reevaluate, and it's been clunky and chunky and hard to do with the pandemic, but I think we're at a time now where we're regrouping. And that's where we set it at this, but we're coming back with all of this. So there's a disconnect here. So how can we make this work? And a lot of it is tied to a significant budget.
Yeah. Yeah, I see, I know exactly what you're saying. I think also, though, that these experts that we've drawn into committee positions still have a wealth of wisdom and knowledge to share. To use the example of carbon accounting, as our CEO has just said, the reports that are coming out of the CAC are seeds. They're just seeds that are being planted into a district which hasn't explored this area yet. It doesn't mean that we immediately need funding to do the carbon accounting like that, but maybe over the next few years, who knows, there may be even a climate action coordinator within your 2024 budget or 2023. But I think it's important for these groups of citizens to be able to bring forward their best hopes, their best recommendations, and to also be grown up enough to accept that you can't get everything. But you got to ask.
Okay. Mr. McInnes, I saw your hand.
Thanks, Your Worship. I do want to pose a question to Councillor Bateman, if I could. And it's got to do with, I do see some strain from committee members saying that the amount of work that they are doing is not sustainable. And I am seeing some frustration in that, and that's a concern of mine. Do you concur?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's some definite burnout happening here. Several of our members have put in hundreds of hours, and could be a very different climate action committee if we do renew ourselves. But yeah, there's definite burnout, and it speaks to the urgency these individuals feel about this dramatic issue. 2030 is 8 years away, as the Premier said today in announcing his roadmap to 2030. So there will be, according to that new Clean BC update, the PACE program was going to continue to be looked at, and there will be local government funding, stable, permanent funding, to be announced next year. So, but yeah, you're right, there's some burnout happening. That committee has been extremely busy.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I'm getting a little confused on a matter here. Is we were talking about the Climate Action Committee, and it looks to me on the 12th of October, was it? Yeah, we passed a resolution here in Council. Council voted on this, that Council included cost of $101,000 for climate action work in the district's 2022 budget. And then now we're talking about 283. I mean, we passed something in council to go into the budget, and then it changes. And I guess I'm finding it a little bit confusing. If there's other things, a member of council could certainly bring it forward, but should not be that 101,000 because that's what we passed in council?
Well, I think that's the in-between. We passed that, and then the committee met, and then they made a different recommendation.
Which takes precedent?
I think the more recent one.
I would think it'd be a council vote that would take precedent. But just a clarification, because I'm finding it really confusing. If you know, a week from now it's $310,000,
No, it
drives
is.
me crazy. But when we pass something and then it gets changed. But I guess that's a discussion for another time.
Mr. McInnes has an answer.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think we did go through this during the budget committee meeting that we truncated, but the 101 was for the 7% solution, which I got direction from council to take away and cost out. There are two other major pieces of work that the Climate Action Committee is doing, the storytelling or the social mobilization piece and the Climate Action Plan. Those two pieces were not part of the 101,000. It was just the 7% solution piece.
Okay. Councillor Lajeunesse? I'll just check. I went to you first, so I'm just going to go follow back. Just, you probably heard our various comments here. Just, do you have any other thoughts to share?
Yeah, no, this has been a great discussion, and it's kind of what I was looking for because, yeah, I just wanted to get a feel for where everyone else was with the committees, and I agree with a lot of the comments that I've heard, and I actually concur with Councillor St. Pierre that I think that what we maybe should do is continue with the committee status quo if the members are willing to continue, and I would suggest that we have another discussion about this because it seems to be kind of a hot topic, and maybe we should bring it to a committee of the whole. But maybe we, in the meantime, extend the committees for another 3 months if the committee members are interested in carrying on until beginning of February, end of February.
Ms. Machado? Thank you, Dana, or Councillor Lajeunesse.
Sorry, yeah, I think just something else to keep in mind is if we do extend these into February or March of next year, if at that time council wants to change direction with any of the committees or re-advertise at that point in time, there's going to be very little time left before the election to actually get things accomplished through that sort of scheme. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, my only piece there would be like, I'm fine extending it, but let's finish what we started. So we have the terms of reference. We'll be looking to get, work wrapped up or packaged in such a way that, things have changed. This isn't necessary now. It would be great if the committees could make a recommendation on, maybe we're still going to be working on the OCP at that time. I don't know. So that'll remain in place. Some of the objectives that are in the terms of reference may or may not be useful going forward. So I think it's the case, at other entities. I'll use a CRD, for example. Every year we examine our terms of reference as a committee member and as a board to see if they're still relevant or not and what's changed out there. So to get that feedback, I think just any new initiative, it would, I'm sort of hoping that the councillors on the committee say, look, we're reaching on the end of the term. This isn't quite the right time to now start something new, that maybe it's a recommendation to a future council, this has emerged, we really think you should do X, and that they kind of wrap the work up and say, here's where we're at. This is what we've started and finished. Here's where we're at. Maybe the memorial wall will be in place, hopefully, maybe not. We recommend you continue working on this for a good fit. It's important to our community. And by the way, we have all these other pieces that we're trying to land on. We'll hear from the province when they say, what is their local government share? Well, if it's to replace Carib at $2,800, not very good news. So until we know what that dollar figure is and what conditions may or may not be attached to it, is it going to be, if it's just to replace like with like, then $2,800 is nothing. Then it'll be, okay, committee, what do you recommend we spend $2,800 on? Even if we matched it, we could do that. That'll be the task for the committee. Their recommendation might say, you need to advocate to the province that they need to do far more than this, because we don't know yet. So that might be a way of doing that. But I think starting anything new at that point, maybe the zoning bylaw will kick off, because that's important too, right? So I think there has to be a way of completing things. We have to hit a point of completing, or at least saying, as a committee member, is to say, you know what? We don't think this is applicable. Why is even council asking us to do this? Like, send it back to us. I'm just going to pick one. Maybe they'll say that administering the spa reserve fund, you know what, council, you need to do that. The buck stops with you, you take care of that. Don't pass that on to us. I don't know. I'm just saying that maybe that's a recommendation. Don't form a committee, make the decision yourself, as an example. But we do need to, this is what we ask for stuff to do, and then maybe with climate action, it's like, okay, you weren't able to fund X, Y, and Z. However, in future years, we're going to make a recommendation that you consider da-da-da-da-da based on what the province and the feds have now committed. We'll see what comes out with the feds. I don't even think the new cabinet is formed yet. So we'll get a sense of where they're at with their budget as well as ours. But I think it's best to recommend not to launch off on things, because the budget's passed and you're going to need to wait for a new council to come in. That's the reality of it all. Councillor St. Pierre.
I would agree with all that. I think that completing the work that the various committees have started is really what's important. So, land use is probably going to be involved with basically zoning coming out of the OCP, but, that's part of the OCP work. The OCP committee will obviously continue. The SPA needs to finish its work. I think the Climate Action Committee, according to Mr. McInnes, has the climate plan and at least two more large outstanding pieces of work. I think that our committees, as they stand, have outstanding large pieces of work that they need to complete. I don't think we need to put anything else on the table for them. But I do think that 3 months is going to be insufficient for most of those pieces of work, especially with the Christmas period, kind of interrupting that. So I would still recommend 6 months at a minimum in order to actually see about, battening down the hatches and completing some of that work. And then we could assess at that point. We have an expert here on 6 months plan and strategic priorities, and maybe have a look and see what we can knock off the list on those committees, see if we can actually, wrap them up and roll them up and let them know that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, so I'm hearing a motion in, that is that council directs staff to extend the committees for 6 months and to solicit applications from the public to fill vacant volunteer positions on the 2022, sorry, when it moves, it's like hard to follow, Community Economic Development, Land Use and Development, Climate Action Committee, and SUP Program of the Arts Committees. That's kind of what I'm hearing from everybody. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything further on the motion? We kind of went into a committee of the whole structure, but it was important for us to hash this out. Okay, you're good, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, June of next year is perfect timing, because then the summer holiday's coming and then the election. So, yeah, 6 months makes good sense.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse?
I would agree with those sentiments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beddoes or Logans? Beddoes?
Yeah, I'm okay with 6 months.
Councillor Logans?
Yes, and a friendly amendment to bring this forward to a committee of the whole at that time. That's probably not a friendly amendment, but I thought I'd throw it out there anyway.
I think that's like a business arising. So no, not an amendment. But you can make a motion arising. Okay, so we have this motion then that council directs staff. The other piece, though, is the piece that Mr. McInnes said about checking in with capacity before making a decision. So, Mr. McInnes, in this case here, we're now doing exactly what you asked us not to do, and that is coming forward and making a direction here without checking on staff capacity. So if I could get your thoughts there.
I'm okay with this. It was more recommendations that come from the committees that have capacity or resource considerations. My desire would be to have an opportunity to bring back a report talking about those capacity issues.
Okay, so this you find is achievable then if it's 6 to June of next year?
Yeah, I do think that with the notifications to the incumbents and to the new members, I think we need to put a little bit of language around just the expectations. Sorry, I'm straddling around the back of my head as well. To Councillor St. Pierre's question. I really think what council and senior management need is a workshop to really work out the strategic priority chart for 2022. It's an important year. It's the last year of a term. We want to sort of wind down and strong as opposed to have a bunch of stuff on the docket at the end of the year. So just some strategies around how we bring the term to a close, I think would be beneficial for all of us. And I'm thinking a facilitated session to do that would be in order.
No, I agree. I think it's important to mark the landing. So that's kind of, a whole other conversation we'll have, but it's helpful in terms of where we're at. Okay, so we have a motion here that council directs staff to extend the committees until June 30th, 2022 and solicit applications for the vacant volunteer positions on the Climate Action Committee, Community Economic Development, Land Use and Development, and SUP Program of the Arts Committees. So that's all moved and seconded. Good discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
Do we have a motion arising or
do you want to make, oh yeah, motion arising, sorry, Councillor Ebony.
That's okay. No, I wouldn't mind making a motion that we bring forward the committee discussion at a committee of the whole prior to June 30th, 2022, and also receive reports from the committees at that time around those discussions we were having, so specifically where they're at with current projects and any amendments to make to their terms of reference, if they wish to continue.
Okay, so let's get something on the screen here. I hear what you're saying. Council direct all committees to report to council at a committee of the whole prior to expiration of the committee term. So sort of members of council that are liaison or chairs of the committees, depending, just make sure that you keep that in mind. May or may not come into play, and then staff will work out what the best date for that would be, that council direct all committees to report to council at the May 2022. Look at that, committee of the whole meeting. Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything further on the motion, Councillor Logans? Councillor Bateman?
Well, I was putting my hand up just to note that we don't sit as council at a committee of the whole meeting, do we? So are you reporting to,
Well, we are council sitting as committee of the whole.
is that how that works? Okay.
Right?
And I'm glad I
Yes.
seconded that.
Because you're elected until you're not.
All right.
You're a councillor until you're not. So you
Yeah.
are council sitting as committee of the whole. It's a procedural piece.
Okay.
Right? Yes, okay. Checking. Councillor Lajeunesse is first. Then I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre. Councillor Lajeunesse, all good? Anything?
Yeah, nothing further.
Thank you. Councillor St. Pierre?
At this committee of the whole, I would like us to discuss some way of actually recognizing our committee members, whether it be a letter of recognition or a thank you dinner or something. Sadly, because of COVID, the Climate Action Committee that I chaired did not have a chance to meet even in person before dissolving. But I think that it's extremely important that we actually thank these people who are giving prodigiously of their time, and they are volunteers. So I think it's appropriate to really consider how to thank them at the committee of the whole.
Okay, well, I think we can take that away and think of what would maybe work for that. Number of people, room capacity limits, COVID restrictions. It would depend on what we're allowed to do. I didn't think we'd be in this pandemic still, so I don't want to say that we won't be at that point, because who knows? So we may run into some issues, but maybe that's a takeaway we can, I think it's good, it's a great idea. Nice to share a meal after or before or something, and just celebrate the work and give a good thank you. I think that's a great idea. I just have public health orders in my head. Okay. And you can see how COVID is keeping the public away, clearly. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for your time on that. Okay. So next up is UBCM CRI 2022 FireSmart Community Grant Application. So we do have our report here. I'll turn to staff. Anything to add?
Good evening, Your Worship. Thank you for your time this evening. The item before you is a grant application approval and seeking your endorsement for a 2022 intake for the FireSmart program. Currently, the District of Sauk was successful in receiving a funding stream in 2021. In September, we hired a temporary full-time position where that person is now doing the work of creating a FireSmart program. This grant application is looking to build off of the work being done right now. Of note in this grant application is a request to fund a updated community wildfire protection plan, which is now identified as a community wildfire resiliency plan. That component moving forward is a significant piece for community planning for wildfire safety, but also a necessary plan that has to be approved and in place for the majority of funding streams going forward. Additionally, this funding stream or grant application compared to last year's has a significant piece for community education. The 2021 application has a lot of work, boots on the ground type work of identifying risks in the community and working in the neighborhoods. While this application also includes that, it has a significant component that is around community education and engagement. The objective of this funding would be to work towards having a wildfire recognized community, which is not an overnight process or a one-year piece that would be successful with this grant funding, but is a longer-term objective for the fire department and the community as a whole, and this application would support that. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Chief, for the report and for the very thorough application. I don't have any questions. I'm just in full support of this. Having heard from a few communities now that feel that their communities were saved because of the FireSmart initiatives that have been in place by both the municipality and residents there, you know, it just sort of shows how important this work is. I think we've been very lucky to date, and that is very concerning that we're on luck with these threats that are out there. And just hearing those mayors, you know, speak about the programming and the various efforts that have been taken around their towns is what saved them in many cases, and what a frightening way to be, but it certainly worked. Or in some cases, individuals were able to save their residents because of work that they had done around their homes and so forth. So I think the community education piece is really important, and it's timely with this. So other questions? Councillor Lajeunesse.
No questions, but I think we should just move forward with this.
Thank you. I'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, through you to the interim fire chief. Thank you very much for this really detailed report. I just had a question. Our FireSmart coordinator's contract ends in June of next year. How does the responsibility then fall, or do you hope to renew that contract somehow?
The hope would be that this funding stream, if secured, would be able to provide the opportunity of the current FireSmart coordinator to continue on with their work and build off that. Of course, there are challenges with term positions and other opportunities as they arise for those individuals, but the objective would be to build off of the current position and the work that they're doing, ideally with that same person.
Good question. So the recommendation is that council endorse a funding application to UBCM's Community Resilience Investment CRI program 2022 FireSmart Community Funding and Supports Fund in the amount of $139,415, and that council authorize staff to provide overall grant management in order to receive this funding. So that's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. And then I think this program has been in place through the UBCM for quite some time, so it's likely that the turnaround will be faster than like a federal ISIP grant, or even a provincial one for that matter. Question, comment, go ahead.
So I just want to say thank you very much again. Also noting that our firefighters are actually literally on the front lines of climate action in terms of adaptation and dealing with that sort of thing. I'm thrilled that you're doing community engagement and education work, and that we have people in the community that are doing that. I find it ironical that the budget that we actually want for climate action is available through grants to other agencies for adaptation, and I so wish that even a fraction of this kind of money that's available, you know, in those ways was actually available for some of the work to maybe prevent some of these problems from ever happening. But that's not due to you at all. Thank you so much, and well done.
No, it's great. Okay, so call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, 8.6 we've dealt with, so we'll move on to 9.1. We have bylaws. We have into adoption now. So the first one is Community Parks Regulation 9.1. So that is that council adopt the bylaw cited as Community Parks Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 823, 2021. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any questions? See none, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. And Fees and Charges Bylaw, 9.2, that is that council adopt the bylaw cited as Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 824, 2021. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any questions? All in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. The new business we have, that comes first. Okay, so this is on our procedural bylaw. Right now, so where we're at right now is with the expiration of Ministerial Order M192, we were not able to change our procedural bylaw until that order had expired. And then we asked our staff to wait for the best practices to be developed so that we don't keep amending our procedural bylaw. So as I understand it, those best practices have not yet fully come from the province. But in the meantime, I've been made aware that Councillor Dana Lajeunesse is unable to join us in person, but can join us virtually. So then our current position is that only one member of council can join virtually, or digitally, or electronically, whatever you want to call that. So that means that you or I have the sniffles, we already have a counselor taking the one spot, we have to stay at home and because of the pandemic, we would have to stay at home and self-isolate and not be able to attend, or we know sometimes Highway 14 closes. So what if any one of us was stuck in Victoria and known closure is going to be undetermined many hours? You're fine and able to join virtually, but there's no physical way you're going to get into the meeting room. So was just thinking that we need to just do an amendment while we're waiting, and a thought of mine was to have 4 members of council be able to attend electronically at any one time, because then at least we would have quorum. And I hesitate to say all, because depending, this procedural bylaw is not only for us today, but it's to inform the next council on what we feel learning is good governance practice. You know, and I think we all feel that we do our best to show up, to be on time. Local government is about the people. We want to be present in person. But I just think knowing that we have one counselor already not available, we need to do something in case anything happens, or we're stuck. What if Demaumiel Creek Bridge is out? I won't be able to get here. Like, there's just things that happen. A tree falls down and shuts the highway down and roads. Like, we know these things happen. But we need to continue with the work. So that's why this is here, a proposal. Councillor Logans, and then I'll go to Councillor Lajeunesse, then St. Pierre.
Couple of things. First, I was surprised that you said 4 permitted electronically at first, but it sort of makes more sense than what I was going to say, which is 3, because I was thinking 4 members present for quorum and 3 online. However, I am not against 4 to have quorum. I think if we use quorum as our baseline and do either 3 or 4, that would be the smartest decision. Because actually, do we need to procedurally, before I continue, ask to, or have this discussed at this meeting, or is this notice of motion for next meeting?
It's for today, just given.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, I was going to suggest that we just ask council to waive notice.
Good, you caught me on that. Okay, so
I'll move to
first
waive
up,
notice.
Move to waive notice by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Councillor Lajeunesse, I've kind of skipped you a bit, but we're just doing some procedural stuff. So all those in favor of waiving notice? Thank you. Okay, so now, thank you for that. It's on the floor. I'm just sort of, my mind is jumping a bit ahead right now.
May I continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay, so I am glad this is on the floor. I wanted to say that our biggest concern, aside from if there's a tree fallen on the road or whatever else, the reality of our current situation, and one that will be the reality for the next council, is that people are going to be sick and not allowed to walk into this building. And it may be the case where you're not sick enough to miss a meeting, and in that case, we shouldn't exclude them from being able to attend. I think we should have as many people as possible able to attend electronically without risking quorum, and ensuring that we're working with the times where it's going to be a little more risky to walk into a building with a headache or a sore throat or a cough. You're not able to do that, and it shouldn't mean that you should be excluded from attending.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I think using quorum could be a little bit odd in that if we had only 4 members attending and all 4 were attending electronically, and we had a contentious subject where we had many members of the public in attendance physically and no members of council in attendance, that would be a little odd. But other than that, I think it should work fine.
It would, because when you play that out, so, you know, so let's say I'm on vacation. So as chair, I'm not here. You're virtual. Another member of council is very sick and can't make it at all. And then, like, I'm just saying, what is the worst case? And it would seem funny. Okay, council is here. They're all virtual, including the chair. Staff will be here and members of the public will be here. But it's just the reality of it. There was a time where I walked into this room carrying a garbage can and a bunch of Kleenexes because I had a really bad runny nose, and I wasn't sure if it was a cold or allergies. I felt fine aside from that. Like, that's completely unacceptable these days. Like, I could not do that. None of us should be doing that. Like, even if, no, I don't have anything. It's like, no, you just keep all of that with you at home. So it's just the case, we have important business. What is the best way? Yes, it would look weird if that's the case, but we're keeping the public safe. We're local government, meaning that we do not require vaccine passports. So there's all of that. We have to think of the health of the public and our staff. So it would be weird, but I guess we're just keeping soup weird, so. Councillor St. Pierre.
A couple of questions, but I'm going to go first with one recommendation. I recommend that we actually move to all 7 being potential electronic, because if for whatever reason the bridge was to blow out and everyone else was getting the sniffles, how do you choose which 4? Is it first come, first serve? I mean, how do you choose which 4 people? I mean, you don't want to have to close the doors electronically when there's absolutely no reason to. So if we're in a situation where all 7 can attend electronically, but for whatever reason can't attend physically, I would prefer to have the option of having all 7 attending electronically. So that would be, and there may be some reason for that not to be possible, but I'm just putting that forward. The other question that I had was chairing the meeting electronically while not being here physically might be a little challenging, and I'm not sure how that would play out. So it's just a comment in terms of what the heck does that look like? But
Well, it can be done. I mean, the CRD right now does it. You know, I mean, I've chosen as a chair of a committee to go in person, and it's just been myself and staff and everybody else online, in WebEx even, which isn't even as great as the technology that we have. I think with the technology that we have in place, yeah, it would look weird, but it's the way of dealing with things. And I think if the bridge blew up, then maybe we need to reschedule that meeting. Like, I'm just saying, like, if it's that big of an issue that 7 of us can't be here, then the public might question, like, why are you guys meeting when there's a severe issue in town? Like, it may be the case when that is the case where there's good reason to cancel and reschedule a meeting.
we still have the option to do that.
Yeah. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I have a lot of problems with this, actually. One is a definition defined as to why a councillor isn't here. I mean, I understand that people could be sick, and I think we should make some provisions for that. But when signed on for this, we're supposed to be accessible to the public, and I don't want to see this turn into something that, you know, you're not motivated to come here. I understand if you're sick, you're sick. So I would like to see something in there that defines as to why the councillor is not attending the meeting. If the bridge is blown up, that could be a valid excuse. If you're down sick, you know, with the sniffles, but not sick enough not to attend, you know, to me, you're sick, you're sick. But I think our first and foremost is accessible from the public to their council. When I signed on for this, I expected to be here as much as I possibly can. I understand there's reasons why not. There's things that you miss when you're not here. Maybe it's the 30 people waiting outside of chambers, they're making their impressions. That's all goes into it. Observing the gallery. So I'm not good with just leaving it sort of open for, 3 or 4. There has to be a reason why you're not attending. And it has to be, I don't know whether we list the reasons or the present council that is here, if it's quorum, always has to have quorum here, I believe, to make that definition. Tony St. Pierre, Councillor St. Pierre phoned in and said that, look, I've got a really bad cold. That's one thing. But I would like to see some definition. I don't want to leave this open, and I'm not too concerned, setting a precedent here. I think the public expects us to be here. And I understand with the COVID and things have changed a bit, but I think we need to have a bit of a check and balance in there. I'm not happy with just making this open-ended. I'd like to see something there.
I have some language that might help.
Okay, can we see the motion on the screen, please? No offense, Councillor Lajeunesse. Councillor St. Pierre?
I was going to suggest that as opposed to a definition of sickness or, reasons why not, simply stating that a councillor has to be unable to physically attend before they can attend electronically. So that would be up to them to make the determination of whether they're unable to attend. But we're supposed to be adults, and as Councillor Beddoes has pointed out, we all agreed that we would be here and that we would make ourselves available, and we should all know what our responsibilities are. But if it's left wide open, then obviously people could just decide, I'm not going to bother showing up physically because it just doesn't suit me right now. But I think that if there's language unable to physically attend, then we know what we're responsible for, and the bylaw is clear. If you can't attend physically, then you can attend electronically, but you should attend physically.
Yeah, Ms. Machado?
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing that might help address that without having a definition is to consider a maximum number of meetings per year that could be attended electronically without prior permission of council. So for instance, 3, then that council member can choose which 3 they're going to miss, and if it's anything beyond that, they're going to have a good reason to allow council to allow that participation. And I think that could just be handled at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, so I know that the council procedural bylaw is coming to us at a future date, but in the meantime, I'm just raise this because I know that Councillor Lajeunesse is unable to join us. So then I'm thinking, okay, if he takes the only spot, what if something else happens? Like, what if there's a road closure as we enter this wet and windy weather? We can run into that where someone is going to get stuck somewhere. Hopefully not, but it can happen.
Sorry, that just reminded me, Your Worship, when those further guidelines come out from the province, I know that one of the recommendations is to have a policy around electronic attendance, so that might be the place that we need to put in that definition of who can attend a electronic meeting.
Yeah, no, and I agree when the whole piece comes back, it's just how do we get over this particular hurdle right now? So that's where I thought, okay, quorum would work. The other piece with that, and the reason why I don't like the idea of all 7 is that if that stays in place, what if, for example, a year from now there's an election and somebody is like, okay, I'm elected and I'm going to always attend virtually?
That's my concern.
And then they could do that, and then you would never see this person at all. I don't know if that would happen, but I agree with your saying that, part of it is being a face to the community and being present. But if they saw, well, I'm in now and I'm elected and too bad, then I'm not going to attend ever in person. I don't want that to happen. So that's why we need to put parameters, but I also just want to get through storm season and keep us quorum so we can keep moving on with the business we need to do. Councillor Wilkins.
I definitely see where Councillor Beddoes is coming from. I'm glad that popped up. I think that Councillor St. Pierre's request is probably better suited to have that restriction around being able to physically attend. Developing a list of why and why not can get into privacy issues, and we may also miss something that we should have or shouldn't have, so I feel like that would be a bit above our scope, I think. If it gets beyond, for instance, as the physical requirement, or as Ms. Machado mentioned, a certain number that has to come back to council for deliberation, then at that point, we might have a bit more information about why they may not be able to attend. But I don't, as long as those are checks and balances, I think we will be good, rather than defining specifics.
Okay,
We could bring
Councillor.
a note from Mom.
Yeah, requiring doctor's notes,
Yeah, we don't want to get into that where we're getting doctor's notes. Not everyone even has a physician now. There's, to get my kid to write mine. Councillor Beddoes, and then I'll go to Mr. McInnes. And then there's a potential amendment here.
Yeah, I like the idea of Councillor St. Pierre. I think his amendment would be fine for the short term until staff comes back with the proper wording. So I'm okay with that. That sounds like a good place to go. So, yeah.
So let's entertain that as an amendment by Councillor St. Pierre is amending physically unable to add in person, seconded by Councillor Beddoes.
Sure.
Because that wasn't in the main motion. So this is the amendment. And then, but I think the piece here is that this is sort of temporary until we,
Yeah, that needs to be said too.
so do we need that in here as well? Like this piece here is only temporary until we see the whole procedural bylaw in its. I think that's necessary. To add it in, right? Okay. Okay, so we'll get that amendment, and maybe a new sentence would be something like, at any one time, and then a new sentence that this amendment is temporary until the council has been adopted. You're speaking and Ms. Machado shaking her head. So, she's getting the right language in place.
I'm just not sure we can make a regulation, I guess we
Temporary?
can, yeah. I think let's just, can we do a second?
Yeah, and that, yeah, something like that. Well, I think it's important just to follow the bouncing ball.
This looks good, but.
Yeah, and that staff be directed to bring this regulation back to council with full. Perfect, okay. So we have a second, okay, so we have an amendment that's been moved and seconded. So,
I can't see it now.
okay, so I'm going to leave that as a second motion because I'm getting confused, okay? So this will be then that council directs staff to bring forward, okay, we're on the amendment. The amendment is physically unable to attend in person. We moved and seconded the amendment.
Tony.
Yeah. So we're, you did, and Councillor Beddoes seconded it. We'll just check that.
I just don't know about the main motion. I lost track and forgot.
So did I.
The main motion.
Did we get a mover and seconder for the main motion?
I think that's under debate, Your Worship.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, our recorder does not have one.
Okay, so, all right, so now the chair is out of order. Put that in place.
Very rare.
Yeah, it happens. The chair, I called myself out of order here. So let's just put forward the motion then as in one whole thing, that council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to section 10.3 of the council procedure bylaw to permit 4 members of council.
Point of order. We don't need an amendment.
I know, that's why I'm just redoing the whole thing. To permit 4
Chance to get that in there.
physically unable to attend in person to attend meetings electronically at any one time. Does that read right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's better, thank you. And that council be directed to bring this regulation back to council with full consideration of electronic meetings. So I was out of order, so let's just take that amendment out, because the main motion wasn't amended, so, yeah. So now we're going to move this by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Councillor Lajeunesse, can you see what we're doing?
I saw it briefly.
And do you have any comments on this? Would you like me to?
That looks reasonable.
That all looks reasonable. Okay, good. Anything from anyone else? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I think it's great to see the full consideration of electronic meetings, so we're moving towards a hybrid future, and of course, we'll have to also look at the way we can get the public into these rooms virtually as well.
Potentially.
Potentially, virtually.
Okay,
It's a new world.
this is all here, so all those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay, so we're up to 4, quorum is good. Okay, so the next one is, I'm going to read this as a notice of motion for the next meeting. Okay? What, you want, I'm going to ask council to waive notice of this notice of motion, so we would debate it today.
So waived.
Move waive by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. Councillor Lajeunesse, councillors are agreeable to us waiving notice on my notice of motion. So, any comments on waiving notice? Councillor, nope, from Lajeunesse. Go ahead, Councillor Logans.
I feel like we've discussed this and never actually put this into a motion, over the years, so I feel like it's kind of a long time coming, and it's fine to waive notice today.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to call the question on waiving notice. All those in favor of waiving notice? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so the notice of motion then is in regards to the Local Government Leadership Academy, the Local Government Leadership Academy Leadership Forum. That's a lot of leadership. And it's basically that council directs staff to amend section 4 of the travel and expense policy CO-05 to add this new subsection. So within our travel and expense policy, councilors are able to attend AVIC, Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, FCM, and UBCM. But all other items come forward to end.
The Rotary.
And the Rotary dinner. So those are all included automatically, and staff reach out and they solicit if you're going, and they take care of it all. The one missing is the Local Government Leadership Academy, which is held every year. When you're newly elected, it's held at Tainamara always for the island, because it's hosted between AVIC and, it's broken down by area associations, so AVIC and LGLA and UBCM holds it together. Every year that follows afterwards, it's in Richmond. And so every year we reach out to see who can attend. It's always like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Members of council have attended various times over the years and have felt it to be beneficial. So this is the ongoing sort of continuing education piece that I felt, and I thought, okay, rather than bring it forward every year, it should just be embedded into this. I think it's good learning opportunities. Good networking opportunities, is very relevant to the work that's happening and so forth. So I thought it was in their policy, it isn't. And the reason why I'm raising it is because registration is going to open next week. And it fills up. So even without COVID restrictions, it sells out. It's sold out online and it sells out in the room. The Richmond room has room capacity limits. I think it limits the whole thing at 125 people or so. Virtually, there was a bit more added to it, but it was still meant to be a very focused discussion. And now that there are plans to go to in-person again, and I know that because I'm a director, I know that is $395. I know that there's an excellent program being formed. I might even be a speaker. I volunteered our CAO, and some of you as well. So it just seems very timely that we get on board, because I would hate it if I know there's a lot of demand, and I would just hate it if we missed the registration completely. So that's why it's here. Thank you for waiving notice. So that is my pitch. I'm moving that. I've spoken to it. I do need a seconder, though. Councillor St. Pierre is seconding. I'm also out of order again because I spoke before it was a live motion. No one called a point of order. I ran with it. So that's where I'm at. Councillor St. Pierre, Commonstead.
No, I think this is appropriate. As Councillor Logans has pointed out, we've discussed this and gone over this many times over the years. Let's just make it so.
Yes. Councillor Lajeunesse, any comments?
No, I would agree. Let's make it so, and sign me up.
Excellent. And we carpooled as well to save on costs and the like. And it's not only this council, every council has had members attend this and find a lot of good value in it. It's also sponsored by BC Assessment. Province is involved with it, the planning, local, the UBCM offset that staff have. I forget what it's called now. They're involved in it as well, so we get what brews up from the staff level. It's not CAMA, it's something else. I can't remember the acronym now. But anyway, there's, yeah. Okay, anything from anyone else? Okay, call the question then. All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Stay tuned for your emails on this. Okay, so going back into the agenda, item 11, gas cards for the Christmas Bureau. So this has come up in the past, and we've also entered into a service agreement with the food bank to fund, but I kind of viewed it as two different pieces perhaps, and that's where I was just looking for clarity, that the money goes to the food bank. This here is to support the volunteers. So I didn't know that we would take the funds out of the food bank fund to recognize the volunteers for their travel expenses. So that's why this is here. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, this is sort of a one-of. This is only done because of COVID, and because we're not through it already, they have to plan now. And normally people would pick up their Christmas hampers, but this year, because COVID is still with us, they're going to deliver them again. And so this is just sort of a one-of, and I don't think it's a budget item. It's for the people to take the time to drive their own cars and trucks to deliver all these hampers, and it's a great thing. And I think it's about 700. What was it? Yeah, 750. I think it's well worth it. These people work hard for our community.
So this is specific
It's not
because
me.
of...
I don't get any either.
Okay, but this is specific because of the delivery model in
That's
place
right,
this year.
because of COVID.
It's a one-off.
Normally, people would be obligated to pick them up. They do deliver the odd one, but this year, as opposed to last year with the COVID, it's because of a safety issue. And that's for their staff and the people, they're having them delivered. And I think it's $750 well spent, so.
Okay.
I'd make the motion when you're ready.
Okay, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Agree with Councillor Beddoes. Just curious where we would want to take the money from, contingency or possibly from COVID relief funding? Just curious.
Council contingency.
Councillor contingency, okay.
Yeah. So the motion then would be that, or Councillor Lajeunesse, do you have any questions?
No, I agree with council contingency.
Okay, so the motion would be that council provides $750 to the Christmas Bureau for volunteer gas cards from council contingency. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. And then the next one was the Business Excellence Awards, which I understand because of the timing, this has been addressed already by our staff, and we are sponsors of the volunteer category. So, yeah, at this point, it's just to receive for information. Moved
Your
by-
Worship, if I could interject here, we may be offside with our purchasing and sponsorship policy. So to get a resolution from council to participate in this, and we're looking at the not-for-profit and volunteer opportunity, it would bring us in line with our purchasing policy. So Section 7 of our community grant and sponsorship policy, states that these do have to come to council, these sponsorship opportunities.
Okay, so it does have to come to council.
Yes, I'm just reading the policy now, and it's
Okay.
pretty clear to me. I'll maybe ask Ms. Gray if she concurs, but...
Sorry, through your worship. Yes, I agree. I think it was just looking for a resolution from council that they support sponsorship of the event. And there's $2,000 left in the sponsorship budget in 2021.
Oh, good. Councillor Logans?
This is fine, this is great. My concern, though, because I received the email that we all did from them saying that the sponsorships were all taken up, and that email happened within like 30 seconds of the one going out saying, now's your time to buy one. If we only have 30 seconds to purchase an award, I'm grateful that staff jumped on it and made it happen, because that's literally how quickly those went. So perhaps we should look at our sponsorship wording and change something so that this doesn't happen again, because we don't want to put staff in the situation where they're having to make that decision prior to bringing this to council, but we also want to be able to jump on things like this.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with staff, too. Is there some way of us sort of addressing this, you know, I don't know, at the start of the term, you know, that council makes decisions that for the term we're funding, as long as now the Chamber Excellence Awards haven't happened every year for 65 years, but almost every year for 65 years, that you can kind of just make the decision that, and then it's there, and then staff can just see it and act on it and keep us as a placeholder, as opposed to rushing, and we spend, you know, with everything we have going on, we're spending a lot of time on $250. So is there another way to streamline this to ensure that we have that? And it is subject to the will of council, so that's why I'm sort of saying, like, for the term, right? And then a different council may, I don't know, not want to fund the volunteer category and want to do something different, if at all. I don't want to say in perpetuity, because I don't know the future of the event. But for 65 years, it's been happening, virtually or not. There's been something.
Just to follow up on that, another option could be to work with them to say, give us a chance to pass on it first, and if we say no, give us first right of refusal on an award each year. If we say no at the upcoming meeting, and then that way they're not held back by their timing of choosing the sponsors as well, perhaps. It may be a communication piece instead.
Yeah, we just need to do something so we're not missing out or holding up the process. So let's deal with this one first, and then we'll get some feedback from staff on that. So the first part then is that council sponsor the volunteer category of the 2021 Business Excellence Awards, the amount of $250 from the sponsorship fund. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Anything, Councillor Lajeunesse? He's like, you guys are still talking about that. Okay, I think he's good. All those, anything?
No, I'm good, sorry. Having trouble finding my unmute button again.
That's all good. I won't ask. Okay. Anything from anyone else? Okay. So that's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So to staff, is there, maybe just leave it, I don't know what direction you need from us, but just something that sort of catches this. And we need to sort of see, like, there's some other things, like we sponsor for the Navy League, for example, $50 for engraving or $75 for, we have 2 awards we sponsor when the Navy cadets have their big event. There's been some things at the fall fair that we've sponsored that are, you know, when they did the car show, it was a $100 award and something else for $50. Like, is there some way of streamlining that so you don't have to put staff reports and all that together? It just seems that it maybe annually or every couple of years, we can kind of address them all. I know that things change with the community organizations, but really, there's a few things that every year we're doing. And so,
Point of order.
yes, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Can we just have a list of these recurring items and say that we're going to fund these to this amount each year, and that way we only have to go through this if there's a new item that comes up?
That's good. I see Ms. Gray has her hand up.
Through your worship, just to respond to that, I think I can present some information to council at the upcoming budget meeting, just with some historical analysis on what's been sponsored, and let council make some recommendations based on that historical information. Just to muddy the waters a bit, there was, I believe in my time here, $2,000 we used to sponsor a table, and the budget for sponsorship is only $2,500 a year. So I can just provide some more further information to council at the November 1st meeting and let council determine what that means for the overall budget going forward.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then I just think we just need to streamline it a bit for staff so that everyone knows, okay, is this one a go or not, or what? And then some of the events that we used to have might return. The Rotary Dinner, well, we might sponsor that. There's Sukarama. I don't want to mention too much about that. And some of the other pieces that were annual traditions until COVID canceled them all. So it would be good to get that information and then to follow up with what would be a good guiding document on that. So we'll just leave it at that for now. Does that work? Perfect. Good. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so 12, council verbal reports. So, Councillor Lajeunesse, you're up first.
Nothing really to report other than I would rather be there in person, and I want to thank staff for making it possible for me to attend virtually, and it's gone rather seamlessly, except for my struggling with the unmute button. So thanks for what you've done there.
Thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on your comments earlier about you're getting a lot of feedback about the OCP. Well, just to be sure, we are too. Okay. And staff and the consultants and ourselves have taken in a lot of information this last little while. We get a lot of letters and some last-minute lobbying and concerns, and I'm happy to say that staff and the consultants are taking everything into consideration, and we're having a meeting either November 17th or 18th. I don't know which it is yet. We just got it on the go, and we will have a go at some of those things. But there is a lot of people at this point in time. Okay. And that's exactly what we wanted. We asked for people to come back. I just would hope that you refer them to the committee, and we will look at their concerns. And the last thing, of course, is the sports box. There's a good chance we will not get that concrete poured this year. We might have to wait till better weather, which is unusual for those that are just newly with us. You can almost count that pretty good weather up until Halloween. And this year it's just been absolutely dreadful with the rain. I've never seen it like this before. I guess it must be climate change. But whatever it is, like I say, the rule of thumb, you had pretty good weather up until Halloween, and then the skies opened up for the month of November. So it just caught us off guard. So that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Other updates? Councillor Bateman.
Sure. So I joined the Climate Action Committee for our first meeting right here in Council Chambers back on October 13th. That was 50 minutes. Chandra, who's not here tonight, led us very expertly through that meeting. We approved a submission to the draft OCP, and we also accepted and forwarded the revised budget recommendation we'll explore on November 1st. Also, 2 Saturdays ago, we had the first stage of the 2-part Souk Homelessness Coalition Strategic Plan session. We had about 35 people over at the Baptist Church, full day of brainstorming, following opening remarks by, among others, Councillor Beddoes in his role as Deputy Mayor, and spoke eloquently, with some humor, I think, on the subject of how the district and the Souk Shelter Society and government agencies work together for those temporary shelters at Sea Park and at the truly former Mulligans after its fire. So, yeah, it was a great day. Souk Shelter Society's Carla Simic also spoke. It was a remarkable group of people gathered, and we'll do part 2 on November 20th. I also attended the Edward Milne Community School Society Annual General Meeting. Willie Burrows from Camp Bernard is again the president. Kate Barton is vice president. Susan Percival is treasurer, and board members Loretta Droysher, Steve Anderson, and the new principal, Mike Bobbitt, are on that board going ahead. And people can join for $2 as a member of the MCS Society. So it's an interesting place. As Councillor Logans can tell you, the community school is a pretty rare and special enterprise, connecting this high school with the community at large. And yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you. Oh, I just wanted to say, and I mentioned Anderson Farms being such a, turning the tide, but I forgot to mention Councillor St. Pierre's own cast iron farm, which showed up, how many years ago now? 8, 10 perhaps? But thereabouts. So I think that's great news for food security in our community.
Excellent. Councillor St. Pierre? No? Councillor Logan's update? Question, Councillor Bateman. Please send my regards to Loretta Deutscher.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
And is the makerspaces closed? Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for the benefit of staff, EMCS converted what was once for maybe automotives, like one shop and mechanical repair, all moved out to Belmont. They took the space and created a makerspace. So for a membership, you can go in and use all sorts of stuff, like from 3D printing to sewing machines to quilting to chop saws and skill saws and everything. And so pre-COVID, I actually went in and did a workshop in woodworking, and in 3 days created this mitered box. Like, it's impressive. Like bandsaw, chop saw, planers, like all this stuff. And you get walked through it from like just getting planks of wood to actually creating something out of it. So it was quite something, and just to see all the equipment and to learn how to use it. So it's kind of good for hobbyists who are like, don't want to invest in it all, but you may just be into quilting and need to use a serger or, some pieces of equipment, and a lot of it's donated or purchased new. It's just an amazing space. And so the workshops that they had out of it were something. I've always been interested in woodwork and great, but I'm not going to be buying all that stuff. But I would certainly take a workshop again. It was pretty cool. Never used any of this. Yeah, they walk you through it and make sure you don't lose any limbs or anything, but because I can see how that could happen. But it was quite interesting at the same time.
Yeah, just to say, Councillor Logans was a key figure in making that happen back in her day, so.
We actually
bravo
cut the
you.
ribbon together with my big scissors. So just on a final note, I'm off to the CRD this week, regional parks, followed by committee of the whole to tackle the budget, so that'll be interesting. My meeting that I had with BC Ambulance, I needed to reschedule. I had to go into Victoria unexpectedly, and then I just didn't make it back. So that's been moved into November. And then I'm doing some work with Souk Literacy that I also had to reschedule, unfortunately, of a family member in hospital. So everything just shifted around. But the literacy, I've been doing recordings of reading to children. I think literacy is such a big piece in our society. It seems to be picking up some traction, so they were going to do some interviewing, my favorite authors, what literacy means to me. So that's all coming. The worst book I ever read, which I'm still trying to conclude on, best book I've read. I know I have top 3. But anyway, those sorts of things, and it's all around literacy. So I'm looking forward to that, actually. It's something fun. And then in terms of LGLA, I have been made officially a board of director, as a director at large. I was there as a UBCM appointment, but I really enjoy the work, and I think it's extremely valuable, and I love local government and all that you can learn through it. So that's fantastic. So that work is continuing. And that's about it. So I'm glad everyone's phoning you on the OCP, so, because I'm telling them
Not me
to.
personally, but
Yeah.
the group of OCP members have lots to say. They're talking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And staff is right on it. We had a meeting with, just an informal one, and very impressed with staff and how they're keeping up with all this stuff, and it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it is. So just recommend, and you do get members of the public that are reaching out, I mean, of course, you always want to give them good time and consideration, but also consider directing them to the relevant committees, because then the counselors involved will have more awareness of what's happening on the ground, really. Councillor Bateman?
Can I, a question on that subject. Are we going to see the full package of submissions formally sent to planning?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I would hope.
For the OCP?
So. I'd like to, anyway.
Yeah, it's in the public domain. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to see them. I mean,
Your agenda probably on that.
gee, I don't know. I guess well, go ahead.
Well, let's have our staff give that answer.
I'll answer that for you. So we actually just had our weekly check-in with Dialogue, the consultants for the OCP. So they're working on those comments and they're compiling that summary. So once that's posted to the advisory committee's agenda, then that becomes information in the public realm for anybody to view. So those comments and the summary will be developed shortly.
Great. Okay, so that concludes council updates, and that takes us to the end. Item 13, call for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. As always, thank you very, very much, staff and councillors, for all of your work tonight, and to members of the public that are viewing, thank you for joining with us tonight. Do we have any online? 3, thank you for joining us. We know that one is Councillor Lajeunesse, so thank you to the other 2. And on that, stay well, everyone, and I'll call the question on adjournment. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Drive safe.